The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game, the show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by the Lonesome Bro host.
I'm not lonesome.
Okay, I meant lone like you're the only one on the show. You're not actually lonesome. That was poorly phrased. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, it's good to just have an episode where it's just you and me again. I always enjoy this.
I was going for kind of like a folksy charm, like, you know, like a lonesome cowboy or something like that.
Yeah, that's me. I can see how you would imagine me that way.
Sure. Yeah, it is actually sometimes nice to just do an episode that's just me and Shane because, you know, we're trying to make ourselves look good with our co-hosts around, but now it's just you, me, and our literally dozens of listeners, so we can really let it all hang out.
Yeah, let it all hang out. I mean, or at least hanging out.
Yeah, hanging out indeed. And hanging out is the topic of the episode today because for a variety of reasons, we've ended up with another one of those weeks where none of our schedules lined up well enough to talk about a single game.
You know, it doesn't mean we're not playing games. And
This is
we
true.
do still have gaming-related discussion. So, you know, why not? Episode.
So we thought, you know, we've done a few little topic-based episodes over the last year or two, and I had a sort of idea itching at the back of my skull about something that I thought would be fun to talk about on the show. You know, the show's theoretically about fitting games into your life. So specifically, the most important aspect of that is games that are short enough to fit into your life. But there's a lot of other factors that go into what helps games fit into your life. And so the sort of overarching topic that I thought we would talk about today is just sort of what's working and what's not in terms of your gaming setup and gaming life, in terms of how games are fitting into your life, things that are working, things that are making it easier for you to fit games into your life, and maybe things that are not working so well, things that maybe need a little improvement or that you thought would work well but aren't, things that are, you know, roadblocks to enjoying games. So I guess we just dive into that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot that we can talk about that is not about a specific game and how that fits in. This is more of a chance to talk about our lives and how how we play our games than it is to talk about, you know, hey, this game takes less time than this game.
That's what our show is. Every week we get on the show and say, this week we played this game. Well, it takes a little longer than this game, but not as much time as this game, for about 45 minutes.
This one is approximately 1.5 Zeldas.
Nice.
So for me, I guess we could start off just by talking about what our gaming setup looks like. And I want to be a little expansive with that, because for me, gaming is not just the video games we talk about on this show. Gaming includes board games. Gaming includes various, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. We play pretty regularly. I play a lot of Magic the Gathering. Raygan will, you know, stop at me every time. I really want you to retire that gag, my dude. Because
Never.
Magic the Gathering is one of the most popular games in the universe, and you're the only one who thinks it is a gag every time it's mentioned.
It's just a gag that you mention it so much.
I don't even mention it that much. It's literally one of the games that I play.
For a while there, we had a long run where it seemed like you were bringing up Magic the Gathering every single week. Like, your what's making us happy this week was like, well, they came out with a new Magic card this week, and it was ding. But okay, yeah. All right. I'll let you have this one.
So, you know, I have the great fortune of being able to spend a lot of time on games for someone in my situation. You know, I'm a grown ass adult with a job and a family and a career and all that, and so I just happen to be able to probably spend 1 or 2 nights a week getting some real gaming hours in, right? And so, in that, I'll play some games for the show, but I do try to at least every other week have a D&D night. And for the last while, pretty regularly, I've been attending Friday Night Magic at my local game shop. So, fitting all of that stuff together is a little tricky. And then the gaming setup that entails is, well, God, I have a whole shelf of board games and boxes and boxes of Magic cards now. And it does get to be a little much. I'm at a point where I kind of need to slim down just the stuff that encompasses my gaming life, and maybe just sort of reduce just the literal space in my life that it takes up.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. Like part of what you were talking about there is the like job slash family slash schedule. Like you don't think about that so much in terms of like how are you fitting games into your life, but a big part of a big part of fitting games into my life is that I've got all this other stuff going on in my life. But also, yeah, I think we're both pretty lucky in that, like, for me, my big hobbies are gaming and this podcast. And those are both something that I devote a lot of hours to every week. And part of what, makes me fortunate enough to be able to do that is that I have a job where I can work from home. And while it is a fairly busy job, I do get some long stretches of downtime within it where I can maybe, do something else, edit a podcast, that kind of thing. And also just, I do have young kids, and that's changed a lot of the way that I approach games. But I'm a night owl, so my gaming time is mostly kids are in bed until question marks. But like, yeah, we're both kind of lucky that we're at a stage in our life where we're able to spend time on hobbies every week, and that's really nice. So I would file that under things that are working, even though occasionally that is something that we hit a train wreck. Or like this last week, we were in the process of moving my youngest from a bassinet in our bedroom to his own bed in the nursery, which, let me tell you, like any plans I had to play any video games after the kids were in bed that entire week were completely thrown out because, I was spending all the time I would have normally been spending gaming, like watching a monitor and going and occasionally settling down a very fussy little 5-month-old. So like that kind of thing comes up for all of us, Laura, except for you. Sorry, Laura. You know, that's life. Something about doing a podcast about video games is that it makes something that is like, just your fun hobby of doing games suddenly have to start fitting around a schedule. I don't have to like this.
It does really focus things.
It
I
does.
certainly, it has really focused me in on being a little bit more objective oriented than I was before on games. You remember there have been times in my life where I got very swiftly pulled down a long rabbit hole of like Destiny 2 or something like that. And like
you play the same game every night for 2 months or something.
That isn't something that I actually have room for in my life anymore. I just don't really have the ability to do that. And I mean, it's not that I don't like want to. Sometimes there are games that'll come out where it would be very cool. Like the closest to that for me has been Elden Ring this year.
Yeah,
it was a very, very large game. I still haven't finished it. I am
same.
I got through the capital, for those in the know, and I have kind of lost steam, but every time I pick it up I get a little farther. It just involves taking lots of breaks.
Yeah, I'm the same way with long games. Like I have to pick one a year, and I don't always complete it. And that's one a year. Like I'll pick an RPG once a year and decide like this is going to be my RPG for the year, and I try to squeeze it into the gaps in the playing games for the podcast schedule, and it doesn't always work out. For the last, what is it now? probably for the last 3 years, I've been trying to make my way through. God, is it 3? It's probably 3 years I've been trying to make my way through oh geez, I can't even remember the name of the game now. It's been so long.
Impressive.
Trails in the Sky, like Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, which is a JRPG on the PSP and a few other platforms, including Steam. Man, like I would love to finish that one day, but I started it on the Vita and then decided to scrap that and started it again on PC. And I've gotten, halfway through it both times, and I don't think it's ever going to happen, guys. I'm also I've been halfway or more. I've been actually probably, I think at this point I'm like 90% of the way through Persona 3. But it's just, I just hit a wall with a boss, and it took me like 2 years to play through most of Persona 3. Like it took me a fully a year and a half to play through The Witcher 3. Long games, they, it's complicated when you are doing a game a week for a podcast, and then I spend at least like one night a week just doing the edit of the show. So that's a night I could be playing games, but I instead do the editing. I'm not complaining. I actually enjoy editing the podcast. It's like a kind of a fun Zen activity. I put on my headphones, I get a beer or something, and sit down and I edit the podcast. And I've gotten to where I'm pretty fast at it, and I enjoy doing it. But like it's looking at our schedules, like part of the reason that we do things the way that we do is that the podcast does sort of bring focus to your gaming schedule. Makes you have to be pretty intentional. If I decide to pick up a game, I have to decide, like, is this a game for the show? Is this not a game for the show? If it's not a game for the show, when am I going to play it around the stuff that is for the show?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the stuff that's really working well. For me, the one that has been a real delight for just sort of fitting into my life is the Playdate lately. I am carrying it with me pretty much everywhere. It lives in my work bag. And the fact that it is kind of push, not pull, I don't have to decide to go and find games for it, is really something. I kind of thought of that as a gimmick at first, but I really do like the model that they've got. Obviously, they've just rolled out their store, but even that is very specific. I really like having the little light come on and say, hey, you've got a new game. I would say maybe 1 out of 5 of the games in the Playdate season has been something that I want to put, much time into at all. But some of them are real bangers. For me, the most recent kind of find there is called Sasquatchers. I don't know if you've tried that one at all.
Yeah, I hadn't until you mentioned it, because something about the art, I just wasn't drawn into it. But
it's
like
kind of goofy looking, the art. But if you for those who haven't discussed it, like we have, it is a turn-based tactical game similar in play style to Advance Wars, which is kind of catnip for me. I love Advance Wars. I am really crossing my fingers that that new re-release of Advance Wars 1 and 2 finally makes it out of Nintendo's vault.
I hope no other wars ever happen.
I know.
Like,
I was gonna say, like, this delay happened when the invasion of Ukraine began, and
like
a
year and months ago. Like, I think it's so weird that they first of all that they delayed it for that when it seemingly was done. Like, there were people who had, like, there were some people ended up with some glitch where they actually were able to download the full game on the eShop, and it was like ready to come out. It was 100% complete, and then they delayed it for over a year, which was, and it's not even like a game about like glorifying Russia. It's just weird.
It was always weird that there was a Nintendo game straight up about child soldiers and tanks. That that's odd.
I don't know. It didn't make sense to me then. It still doesn't make sense to me now. I'm not outraged about it or anything, but
hoping Putin doesn't pull anything and get it thrown back into the void. But I'm looking forward to playing it. But that itch really has been well scratched and then some by Sasquatchers, which is on top of, it's a very different concept. So obviously it's not a war game. the main characters of this game are cryptozoologists who are exploring different forests looking for Bigfoot and other uh cryptids. And it uses the crank on the Playdate in a really lovely way, because what you're trying to do is get photos of those cryptids, and you're using the crank with your camera. And
I think
it's
what I like best about it is the weird like first person view it goes into when you're doing the photos.
You get these great views of the characters, and it's very funny.
It is. I quite liked it. I've only played through like the tutorial and like started a level, so like I didn't have time to really put a lot of time into it. But for some reason I hadn't tried it at all until you mentioned that you were enjoying it. So like, thanks. Cool.
Yeah,
good game.
It's definitely one of the gems of season 1 on
I've actually gotten back into the Playdate as well. Like it had been kind of just sitting on my shelf, and then when the catalog thing came out, I kind of recharged it and tried a couple of the new things that were from there, but it just sort of made me start picking it up again, and it has sort of jumped back into a rotation for me. It's still sort of just like a good desk toy, but like I'm now 40th ranked in the world in the first level speed, whatever category of the Zach Gage Snake game. I've been putting a lot of time into that one. Really like that game.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good one too. That I've spent a lot of time with that one, mainly just because it's so quick to pick up and play. Like the Playdate has this nice spot as a kind of a gaming fidget toy. Mm-hmm. Where you just can pick it up and jam a quick game of the snake game or whatever. And so that's one thing that's fitting really well. The other thing that's fitting well, we've discussed to death on this show, and that is the Steam Deck, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's still working well for me. I'm still ending up playing it a lot docked on my TV downstairs, mainly just because it's now slightly better for gaming on my big screen TV than the Nintendo Switch, which it's parked next to almost all the time.
The Steam Deck has continued to be like a big part of my gaming setup. Being able to download games that are would have normally required me to go to my office and play them in other places in the house. Like I've been playing through the what's it called, the Miles Morales, and my kids love Spider-Man, and so when I want to play a video game and I want my kids to, like, I don't know, quit yelling, I can pull out the Spider-Man game, and they want to sit there and watch over my shoulder because it's Spider-Man, and they ask me a lot of questions like, Dad, why does Miles have the blue costume in this? Because I haven't got the black costume yet. I only just started it. And it's like, oh well, he hasn't got it yet. Where's Peter? Like lots of very in-depth lore questions about the game
and his amazing friends related questions.
Oh yeah, exactly. But they also keep asking me questions about like they haven't seen Spider-Man fight just regular human dudes before.
Yeah.
And it really distressed them at first. They were like, Dad, why is he hitting just people? Dad, why is he hitting those people? I'm like, they're bad guys. They're bad guys? To them, bad guys have to have like bizarre costumes or like horns or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
So I had to explain that, like, no, these are bad guys because they have, I guess, politics that Spider-Man doesn't like or something. But yeah, it's been the biggest change. Like, we did a whole episode on the Steam Deck, and I've talked people's ears off about it. I super love the thing, but the biggest change for me has been that, like, since I got it, it's gotten way better at being a TV based console than it used to be.
Yeah,
there've been a lot of software changes. Some of the third party dock hardware. First of all, the first party dock came out, but also the third party dock hardware has gotten better. So I picked up a third party one that was like $25 and works great. And just that whole experience. Oh, it's gotten better with like working with third party controllers. So I can easily take an Xbox controller and switch it between my Xbox and the Steam Deck. And that's worked out really, really well. and just like the whole experience of that has gotten so much better. The fact that I can like install a game on there, pick it up, take it from my office to the TV to the couch. I can play it in other circumstances where I might, want to sit there and play a game. And with Steam Cloud, those saves generally sync back to my PC if I want to play at my desk. Like it's gotten so much better than it was at launch, and it was pretty decent at launch. So that has definitely been a big factor for me lately of like fitting games into my life.
Well, another thing that has been maybe an increasingly big part of my gaming setup, if we're just talking hardware now, is my gaming PC itself, right? Which is still great. I think I bought my I don't even remember what the brand is. Cooler Master Ultra. I bought an off the shelf game.
No, you got it from, I think it's the I remember because I was like, hey, you should get this one. It's the Best Buy like house brand. I think it's like Cyber Power or something like that. Or is that right.
Cyber Power?
Or that might be the name of the brand of uninterruptible power supply.
I am looking at it right now, and all it has is weird gaudy rainbow.
So, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was at the time, it was just a good deal in the midst of a enormous supply chain dry up of graphics cards. Which
this was, I think we both got our, like I got mine a little before you, but we both got them. I think was it early in the pandemic or no? I got mine before, but I think you got yours.
Yeah, I was a little after you, and it was it was definitely during the height of COVID where people were not shipping graphics cards around the world, and when they were, it was for crypto mining.
Yeah.
So, I was very glad to have it. But the great thing about these gadgets is they can basically run everything, and I have still not had one thing I threw at it that it didn't perform well with. So, that's been great. I'm more and more wishing that I had it more portable somehow, which, I mean, you've been telling me how you've switched over to having basically Xboxes in a variety of rooms of your house. One of the things that maybe listeners don't understand is that when you have a house full of like family, like you're often just going to want to play games in whatever room where it's quiet, or where maybe your kid wants to be so that they can watch. It's really starting to get under my skin how often my son is actually wanting to come into my office to watch me play games.
Yeah, I have a rule where my kids are not allowed in my office, but I occasionally make an exception for my daughter if she wants to come watch me like play a video game while her brother's napping or something like that.
Yeah. And so I don't have such a rule. He does stay out of my office when I am working, but if I'm just playing games, he can come in. He can come in. But yeah, I've got like a little folding chair in the corner that I'll set up for him. And
the naughty chair.
Yeah, what I've been doing. The reason he's been coming in most of the time lately has been Minecraft, and he wants to play on his iPad. Which, by the way, I'm really trying to figure out how to get him. He stubbornly wants to do it on the touch screen, which is like the worst way to play that game. And I've got him a controller paired with it, and like that wasn't convincing enough somehow. Like
I think you've got to put it on a TV because like the TV's not I understand why you would want that, like but I and maybe it's a little bit like paternalistic, but like, hey, we're fathers, like that's the thing. But like I agree, like watching kids try to play games like Minecraft on a touchscreen. Some of them are excellent at it, and that's fine. But like, I don't know, the dad gamer brain just like rebels against it. I'm like, kid, you've got to learn how to use a controller. And that's like, a skill that will carry you through your entire life. Like,
well, if anything, I want him to try it on a mouse and key. So a controller, yes, but a controller, yes, that's a skill that'll pay off long term. But I'll tell you, a real skill that will pay off long term is using a mouse and a keyboard. And I have not figured out a good way to handle this because this is getting into Minecraft bullshit, but there are two versions of Minecraft. There's the Java version and the Bedrock version, and we are choosing the Bedrock version because it's available on more things, and we want to be able to play with his cousin who plays on an Xbox. And but in order for that to work, like I can't run that on like 90% of the devices in my house, right? You can't run the Bedrock version of Minecraft on a Steam Deck. You can't.
Why is that?
Well, because
It just doesn't work with Proton, or
there's no Linux version of it, and there's apparently some issues with the Windows version for some reason. The people who do try, and I think partially it's because the Java version is more popular, especially among the kind of people who might be playing games on Linux.
Yeah.
The Java version is better in some highly esoteric ways.
I think it's better mod support or something, right?
Yeah, and stuff like that. So there's trade-offs. Like if you want to play with a controller, you probably want the Bedrock version. If you want to play online across various different consoles, then you need that version. So there's reasons that's the one we're going with. The best thing you can do to get the Bedrock version on the Steam Deck apparently is like the Android version can be hacked to work on it, but I'm not trying to clear that hurdle. I don't want to do that.
No.
But
have you thought about just getting him a little PC?
I'm starting to think about it, but like, I mean, he can't even read, so it seems a little.
I don't know. Like I've been thinking about setting up like a little like second computer just to run some like educational games, because there's a lot of really good. Like I take my kids to the library, and they like gravitate towards the like terrible old computers with like old 90s edutainment software on it. Because I don't know, it's something interesting to them, and so I've been thinking about setting something up for that.
Even the most ancient of laptop probably could run Minecraft just fine.
Yeah, or like you can get those cheap what do they like workstation type computers that are, you can get it for like $200-300 on.
You see, that wouldn't solve the other problem, which is I want to be in the same room with him while I play it. I have to play that game with a mouse and keyboard. Right.
Yeah.
So then,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You do like a tandem gaming setup. Like I keep seeing like TikToks and stuff of like a dad with a like Uber gaming setup next to a smaller desk with a slightly smaller gaming setup next to a slightly smaller desk with a slightly smaller gaming setup.
What kills me is I have so many laptops and stuff in this house, and like that's the thing. The Bedrock version of Minecraft won't run on a Mac. All I have are Mac laptops, so it's a lot to think about. For me, I don't want to spend like hundreds of dollars on a Windows laptop just to have it be a piece of junk that he never touches.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll figure this out. But that's a place where, if listeners have suggestions for me or ideas or anything like that, I'd love to hear them. Hit us up. Raygan, tell them where to contact us for the show. It's on shortgame.lol.
Shortgame.fm. Shortgame.fm.
Yeah,
all the links are on there. Yeah, I think as far as things as far as PC setup goes, like my setup used to be for years that and this was not to go too far down a dumbass rabbit hole, but like I used to really want to have a single desk setup for both gaming and work, like a single computer. Something about the idea of having multiple computers at my desk seemed really like a waste. And so I went to some extra hassle to do things like hack a Windows PC to run Mac OS, like a Hackintosh setup, because I like Mac OS for work and Windows for gaming, or a lot of effort to run
not
games
only that,
on Mac.
You're selling yourself short. You not only did you create a Hackintosh to run your various operating systems, you built it into an old Mac Pro aluminum case.
That was a fun project.
Sick.
Yeah, it is pretty sick. I still use that case actually, but now it's just a Windows PC in there. But like that's what the brainwave I had with when the M1 transition happened with the Macs, was that like my needs for my work PC are so minimal now. It like literally any Mac works. So I just run all my work stuff on a Mac, like a M1 Mac Mini that can just sit on top of my gaming PC, and then I've got some multi inputs on the monitors, and I got one of those things where you can switch the USB inputs between the two machines. And so now I just sort of, have a dual setup, and that works really well. And it, I have, because I work from home, like my office setup, it's always a bit of a mess. It's always a little bit of a cluster, but it is kind of important to me that like it's like a fun and inviting space where I don't mind sitting and doing work, and I don't mind sitting to record podcasts, and I don't mind sitting to play games. And so I've kind of tried to keep my like desk and office set up as sort of multi-purpose and fun and inviting as possible. And that's definitely as far as like things that are still working for me. Like, I definitely putting a little extra effort into like making your desk setup fun and useful is definitely a big part of fitting games into your life, for me at least.
Speaking of desk setups, that's this whole area where I feel like I am at the foot of a mountain, and I see all of these incredible desk setups online. Like if you're on the right corners of the internet, you'll see these rooms that have just this intense neon lighting on every surface, and that have, the screens are all hung on the walls, or perfectly aligned and arrayed, across various hanging stands. And the it's just so cool looking. And I don't know how I'll never have the time to actually tweak, and I barely have the time to clean my office, let alone like decorate it in a way that is going to somehow satisfy the needs of both me being an elite gamer and having a work from home setup. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, I think most of those sorts of things that you see online are pretty unrealistic. You're seeing like somebody's set up at like the most clean and the most refined that it will ever be, because they took a photo 10 minutes after they finished setting it up, and they just dusted everything, and they haven't moved all of their pizza boxes and Funko Pops back into place.
Wow, the shade.
Yeah, well, yes, I despise the Funkos. Sorry, listeners, if you like them. I don't. You're fine.
Someone who will go unnamed started giving my son Funko Pops, just random assorted ones, like literally whatever was cheap on eBay, and I had to put my foot down.
I think if someone gave my child a Funko Pop, I would try to come up with some fun craft projects where we could destroy them together. I think it would. I am
going to give your children some.
Do not. Do not bring that into my home. That would just
every time I visit, I'll just sneak one in and leave it somewhere hidden.
You do that. You every time you come over, you leave something behind, and sometimes it's something basic, like I brought over a carafe of booze and I left my carafe there. Can you return it to me? But other times you bring over your hideous goblin mask and it scares the shit out of my son, and then you forget it in my home, and every few days I find it because my son runs across it and screams. Like, I had to bury it in a drawer, Shane, and you left it here for months.
You make that sound so insane. It was Halloween. That is why I brought a Halloween mask to your house, and I could not wear my Halloween mask because it scared your son, which is why I took it off and left it there.
Yes, and then it was the gift that kept on giving for like 4 months, Shane.
If anything, the villain here is your son for being such a wimp.
He's 2. It was a very scary, hideous goblin mask, Shane.
I mean, that's why I bought it. It's a very realistic, has very realistic eyes.
They're unsettling. I had to turn it inside out, Shane.
It's even worse looking now.
I'm glad it's no longer in my home. Where were we? What were we talking about?
Elite gamer rooms.
Yeah. The one thing that I did to like more elitify my gamer room in the last few months was I got a couple of those
card
like
table behind you.
The card table. Yeah, no, that's what I put out when I'm going to do some soldering. I did some soldering today.
So why has it been up for the last 12 months?
I did some soldering a few weeks ago too.
Did some soldering 12 months ago.
So they're just, I'm gonna keep it up until I'm done soldering for life. No, Shane, it did go away for a couple of weeks and then it came back. But that's the large card table in the back corner. That's my soldering station. That's I said we were talking about hobbies before. My third hobby is completely useless electronics tinkering. The thing I was mentioning though, the pegboard thing. Yeah, I mean it's somewhat useful to me.
You fixed that microphone for me that one time.
Yeah. Now the thing I did this week, I'll brag because I'll like saying it and no one else will want to listen. Was that my wife bought a what do you call it, like we've had some power outages, and so we bought a USB C charged lantern that we thought, well, we use it for power outages or camping, and brought it home. And it was one of those devices where you plug it into your USB-C charger and nothing happens. This is because a lot of like lower end or badly designed tech that charges over USB-C doesn't fully implement the USB-C standard, which requires that it either have a chip inside to talk to the charger and tell it what voltage to provide, or if they don't want to do that, put in a couple of resistors to kind of short to ground certain pins that tells the charger, oh, hey, just deliver regular USB 5-volt power like you would to any other device. It has to do one or the other of those things. And if it doesn't, like a lot of cheap shit doesn't, then it will only charge if you plug it into an old school charger that has a USB-A port. So if your charger has USB-C ports on it, it doesn't work. And that, whenever I get a device that does that, it infuriates me because like I've really been trying to have like nice USB-C chargers. It's like, oh, well, okay, now I can't use any of my chargers that I have out. I have to go find something that's shittier. But if you crack those things open and solder in those resistors that they left out that are like a 1 cent part, then you can make it work with modern chargers. It works fine. So infuriating, but it is fixable. And that was my big soldering project for today. Was I got this thing home from Costco, and like literally 10 minutes out of the box, I was like, oh fuck, let me take this thing apart and do some soldering on it. I hope I don't kill it and have to abuse the Costco return policy, but worked out.
Awesome.
There we go. Totally unrelated to gaming, but you asked. You didn't ask. I asked. Soldering. I just volunteered that information. No one cares.
Well, it was a nice confluence of your special interests: soldering, USB-C power.
I am a weird dad about USB-C power.
Being a prepper.
I'm not a prepper. We just have we're in a weird power grid out here. I'm in the suburbs, and for whatever reason, my neighborhood is not on the Texas power grid. It's on the Louisiana power grid. I don't know why this is. When they get a hurricane in Louisiana, I lose power. When my neighbors lose power, I'm fine. It's a weird trade-off. Anyway, I was, before we did that very large digression, talking about the one kind of like gamery setup thing that I did based on, I think I saw some TikToks or something where people were showing off their gaming setup, and I always get jealous of like, oh, they've got these cool walls covered in like RGB lights, and they've got like controllers hanging from their ceiling or whatever, and
they've got 3D printed guns from Halo on a special rack.
Like that's none of that is me, but I did see a lot of folks with like pegboards on their walls with things like little shelves and like bungee cords and stuff to hold like random stuff. And so I set one of those up, just got the IKEA one, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. I've got like I own an unreasonable number of controllers, and being able to have some of the ones that I use most like up on the wall, it looks nice to me anyway. And they're accessible. Things like my, some keyboards I'm not using are up there, headphones and other odds and ends. And I really like that. Like, kind of, I think it looks reasonably attractive, and it puts some things that I want within reach, and they don't have to be sitting on my desk. So
I'd like to do something like that. I think I will pretty soon, because I've got a lot of junk in this room that I would like to elevate and stick off of my desk to the side a little bit. The problem for me is, my office is in the kind of converted attic of my house, and it has these peaked roofs. There's a
You have a very weird vibe. It kind of feels like it has an attic feel. It kind of like reminds me of like a weird like cozy attic room in a Ghibli movie or something. You've got all these plants and built-in shelves and a peak and a slanted roof, and
that is actually it is a super cozy spot, and I love working in here. I actually have like a built-in nap spot next to my desk that's like a little like a little foam mattress pad on a built-in day bed that's kind of part of this built-in shelf setup. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cute.
The sloped roof thing, I don't know if you can see this, right? You can't. Okay, that's a little
not
bit off
on camera, and this is an audio podcast.
So the attic on this house this is a 1940s house. The attic was converted sometime in the 70s.
That checks out based on the color scheme.
Well, it's been painted since then, but it's just tan. I don't know what you're talking about. The the walls at that point, you couldn't really just buy a lot of sheetrock. There was a lot of use of like beaver board or stuff called homosote or other fiberboard products to do walls in this kind of a space. And it's kind of cool looking. It's got like a texture and a kind of a shiplap looking pattern to it, but especially over time, it has become very, very soft. So if you wanted to, you could reach out and just like poke it with a pencil. Like you could literally stab a pencil through it and it would stay there. A couple of days ago, I was standing up from my desk and I was wearing a baseball cap, and I hit the ceiling with my head. And if you can, baseball caps have that little button on top.
Yeah,
the little
nipple
button on top made a perfect circular hole in my wall. So now I gotta fix that. This has nothing to do with gaming. I hope our listeners.
How do you mud over a hole in like the cardboard your house is made of?
You do it the same way you do any other. You just get the same kind of putty you get for any other hole patching. The thing is, now I gotta faint. There is multiple spots in this upstairs area where I have accidentally put holes in this super paper thin material.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about feeling fortunate about it. We were both homeowners. It's something you feel very fortunate about, but it's also sometimes a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of things that I want to do to improve my overall gaming life, and some of it is just to improve my home ownership and basic life. So
yeah. I don't know. Well, going down the list of things that I think have been working really well in the, fitting games into my life zone, was that like, is just the, so we've talked before about like, I'm pretty positive on Xbox Game Pass. It's been turning out pretty well. I initially got a Game Pass subscription just to play on PC. But what I ended up doing pretty recently was, so I had been getting annoyed that I couldn't play most of those games from Game Pass easily on my Steam Deck. And then there was some sales around the holidays, and I ended up picking up an Xbox One S, the like smaller Xbox console. So it's proved to be really great. And actually, I liked it so much that I ended up actually getting a second one because there was another sale. I think I got them for like $250 or something. And that's pretty damn cheap for what these things do. And they're really nice little, very simple boxes. And I have used them exclusively as Game Pass machines. I have not downloaded or I've not bought any other Xbox games, just using them for Game Pass. But it's one thing about that that's really been helping sort of my like, fitting games in weird times where I might not otherwise be able to get to play a game is like, basically every weekend I've got like a couple of hours in the middle of the day where I could play a game, but my kids are around, and playing games that my kids are interested in like my kids are the kind of kids where if like they want to play with daddy or they want daddy involved, If I'm playing a game and it's not something they're interested in, they're going to bother me constantly. But if I'm playing a game and it's something that they're interested in, they think is interesting to watch, then they're going to sit with me and cuddle in my lap while I
That's
play a
why
game
you
or
got all
whatever.
the trophies in Peppa Pig.
I tried to get my daughter to play Peppa Pig. She liked it a bit. She'll play it for about a half an hour at a time, but she's kind of over Peppa Pig. There's a new Peppa Pig game coming out, or maybe it's already out. Thought about checking it out, but I'm going to wait for Game Pass on that. I'm not spending money on a Peppa Pig game. But yeah, like being able to like just grab stuff off of Game Pass and try it for 10 minutes, in a situation where that's why we ended up playing Tinykin. Or more recently, I would never probably ended up buying the Hot Wheels racing game, but it's on Game Pass, including all of the DLC. Like it comes with all of the cars. And so I just downloaded it one day and checked it out. And my kids were super into like, oh no, try the dino car. Oh, try the one that looks like a hot dog or whatever. Like they really liked.
That game actually looks kind of cool.
It's great actually. Like it's fun to race around in like, environments where it's like, big people, little cars. And I'm playing it on a nice TV where it's got like HDR and it looks gorgeous. Like it's really impressive. The cars really look like little die-cast cars with like good lighting and like lots of fine details.
Is this one Hot Wheels Unleashed or is it the Hot Wheels Rift Rally?
It's Unleashed,
like
I guess.
Games. Yeah,
I think it's Unleashed. And it has this sort of like blind box thing with it, but it does not have, as far as I can tell, like any kind of real money aspect to that. You just sort of race to get coins and unlock cars, and that's actually kind of part of the fun. My kids get really excited when I get a new box and get to open a new car and like, oh, what's it going to be? And like that's been fun. And I wouldn't probably have ever tried that game under just normal circumstances, but because I could just pop it on and give it a try. Like I don't tend to buy, maybe this will change someday, but like I don't tend to buy kids games. I tend to buy games that are just sort of more general audiences. But it's been nice to be able to just sort of like grab stuff like Tinykin or this Hot Wheels game or the Peppa Pig game and just play them for a little bit and see if my kids are into them and kill some time that way. And I don't think I'm ever going to like beat Hot Wheels Unleashed, but it's been nice like having a dedicated, and just the Xbox is like as nice and as seamless as things like the Steam Deck have gotten. Nothing beats the convenience of a dedicated console and fussing around with a setup when I'm trying to like just kill an hour with the kids is really annoying. But the simplicity of like booting up a console, downloading a game off of Game Pass and trying it out has been incredible. So I would definitely recommend the Xbox One S, even if you're not really like interested in getting into the Xbox ecosystem. Just as a dedicated Game Pass box, it is cheap and it is very hassle-free. And a Game Pass subscription plus that is a really, really good setup.
So we've talked about the things that are working. I feel like along the way, we have talked a little bit about things that aren't working or might kind of be rated needs improvement. But we'll try and highlight some things we would like to or maybe plan to change about our gaming setups and our gaming experiences.
I actually, before we talk about things that aren't working, because I do have a couple, but there's one last thing I wanted to mention that has been working. It's a quick one, but it's something that I want to recommend to people if you have needs that are similar to mine. I don't know how much my experience, I have to be really intentional about my gaming time because of the podcast. But like, and because I am getting less and less of it because of kids. But I have to keep track of a lot of games. And so I've used a number of different apps and tools for this over the years, everything from just like a notes document where I keep like notes about games that are coming up or like what we're talking about on the show, that kind of thing, all the way up to various different like websites and stuff. And I've ended up landing on one recently that I'm liking a lot. And I thought I would recommend it to folks as I think it's working for me in terms of fitting games into my life. And it's not just for games. There's this app on the iPhone called Sofa. If you just search for Sofa on the iOS App Store, it should come up. It's got like a purple sofa icon. And it's an indie app. It's like, developed by a single guy, and he's pretty passionate about it. And it's sort of he calls it a downtime organizer. It's kind of like he looked at a bunch of the like fancy features in modern like to-do list or project management or self-organization apps, and applied them to something where it's really just about keeping track of media that you want to engage with. And so I almost exclusively use it for games, but you can also use it to keep track of lists of, movies and TV shows, books, audiobooks,
That's cool. Podcasts, or anything like that?
podcasts, yeah, a lot of other stuff.
Board games.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's really nice. And it's basically just sort of like a fancy to-do list app that's more oriented around, downtime than work time. It does a couple things that I think are really clever. Like you can build lists, you can build as many lists as you want and title them whatever you want, and you can add notes to the items in the lists. All of them are, all of the different types of categories of media that go into it are linked up with different online services where it'll pull in things like, covers and descriptions and release dates and stuff. And it updates them. So like I'll add a game to my list of like upcoming games, and it pulls down a release date. And that release date updates if that changes. And so that's been really useful. And then also I use it for other stuff too. Just like, I keep a list of like, anime that I might want to watch, that kind of stuff. And that's been really nice to have. It's got some bugs. Like it's a single developer. He added a beta feature like a year ago for shared lists. And I tried that to like share lists with somebody else and make, use it in a more collaborative kind of way, and it basically exploded. I think that feature needs more work, but if you're using it more solo, it works really well. And so I want to recommend it, and you can use most of it for free. If you want to be able to like add sticky notes or do certain other fancy things with your lists, it has like a paid version that's like I think pretty reasonably priced subscription. But yeah, I just use it now mostly to keep track of games for the show. I have a list for like games we're talking about on the show, or maybe considering covering, upcoming games. I keep a list of long games. And then you can do things like put things onto the shelf, which I think is a nice little organizational metaphor where like, things that you're working on right now, or that, you want to do immediately the next time you have some downtime, you can put them on the shelf and get a nice display of all the things you're thinking about doing. It's been fun. So I wanted to give that a quick shout out. But then you were kind of very, very smoothly transitioning to things that weren't working.
Let me try that transition again for you, Raygan.
Sure,
like
do
this
it.
time? So we've talked a lot about things that are working for us. And along the way, we kind of talked about some things that weren't. And then we kind of talked about some things that were again. And then now we're going to go back to talking about things that we want to change. Maybe some plans we want to put into practice, some new things we want to try, some things we want to change, maybe some old practices that we want to leave by the wayside. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, when we were talking about planning this episode, we kind of talked about like talking about things that were working for you and weren't working for you. And I mean, I don't know, I don't have that many complaints. Most of the things that aren't working for me are like, I'm not getting enough sleep to play games. Like it's not the kind of stuff that's like easy to either complain about or fix. But one thing that's changed for me in the last little while, I think mostly since the Steam Deck came out, is I thought maybe I just, because we've talked about it on the show before, I thought I'd update people, I guess. I was really high on in-home game streaming. When I first got my gaming PC, I was really excited by the idea that you could have a gaming PC sort of in a central place in your house, and then use things like NVIDIA Game Stream, Steam's built-in game streaming thing, Moonlight, which is an open source implementation of NVIDIA's thing, Parsec. There's a lot of apps that can do this. It'll stream your games or your desktop to other devices in your home. Things like, stream your, game on your desktop to your iPhone or your laptop or your iPad. And that's still theoretically something that's kind of good, but like I have found more and more issues with that as a way of playing games. And the rise of things like the Steam Deck has made it so much less relevant. Things that I would previously have streamed, I can just run natively on the Steam Deck. And, I can attach that to a TV if I want. So I don't have to worry about like trying to stream to a set-top box or, that's the need for that has gone down, and meanwhile the friction for that has gone up. So like, I don't know what this might be a me thing, but like my Wi-Fi network has been a little flaky, and so like in-home streaming has been worse than it was previously. I don't know why. But also like Nvidia previously was like the dominant people for this. Like this was a feature that's built into Nvidia graphics cards and built into the built-in Nvidia like experience software. And Nvidia has announced that they are pulling that feature. It's no longer going to exist. So we'd have to rely on other game streaming options. Steam still supports it, but Steam's was never like best in class for this kind of thing. And so like the experience of that is getting worse. And also I think people are, because the like internet-based streaming is becoming more popular. Things like Xbox's xCloud or whatever you want to call it, and the streaming things from console makers like whatever, all those sorts of things, those are becoming more popular, and that's where it's getting attention. And the idea of like having a gaming PC or streaming from a console to a mobile device, all that, nobody's talking about it anymore. And I think I kept expecting that like this is getting better and better. Wi-Fi in homes is getting better. The the codecs that are in use for in-home streaming are getting better.
Things like Stadia are shutting down.
Yeah, but like the whole ecosystem of game streaming, like I wonder if it's just a failure. Like sure, there are still some companies that are making a try at it with things like the Xbox Game Cloud thing or whatever, but like I am retreating from game streaming as a primary way of playing almost anything. I still did do it with like some Xbox, like I played Pentiment a lot that way, like some of the Game Pass stuff. But even in-home streaming from device to device seems to be like not getting any love and not getting any better. So I'm. But we're getting new options like things like the Steam Deck. So I'm kind of moving in that direction. That's something that hadn't been working for me well at all. Anything for you, Shane? Anything that's been bugging you about your game life?
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that is changing for me is I am finding a lot more satisfaction in games that are social in some way. The kinds of stuff that we
people.
I know, right? I mean, then in my particular life, that a lot of that means that I am playing a lot more like D&D and stuff like that. But then we've been doing stuff like Sons of the Forest. I told you I'd gotten back into Minecraft. Those are just online games that I enjoy playing, and that I even had a big dip back into. I got back into Overwatch for a while, which didn't really stick because
I don't think you told me that.
Doing some weird stuff with it. I had a while where my friends and I were playing a lot of Halo, and so across all of that stuff, like I really enjoyed that experience of like online. In particular, some of the competitive stuff, but that's not working for me. Like I cannot make that stuff really fit into my life. You and I have been very successful in that we have found, I believe, 3 occasions to play Sons of the Forest, which is what I made you commit to before I hit the buy button on that game.
I'll play more. I'm still excited to play more of that, but it is something like that we managed to make that work every couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing. There is no solution to this problem. This is the problem of time. But that's the biggest issue, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard. Anything where you have to like play with other people and like schedule around them and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was always tricky, but it's so much trickier with kids. Like we have this problem just scheduling the podcast too, which is just like how do 3 people with kids and 1 person without in 2 different time zones manage to figure out a time when a plurality of them can get on the internet and do something at the same time. It's really hard. I mean, witness, here we are recording another episode of the podcast with 2 people, which, is fine. Like one of the things I like about this podcast is that we have a fun crowd, and I think it works with almost any combination of 2 to 4 of us, that it's great. But some things don't work that way. Like if we wanted to play like a game like, I don't know, Castle Crashers or something, where we really wanted to have all, like we had this trouble when we were trying to play Shredder's Revenge, like being able to get 4 players together to play the thing all at once, really hard. And it's only getting harder, for people in their different stages of life. Having kids, man, you want to talk about things to put under the column of things that are not working in our gaming lives, man. Having bedtimes, getting kids to go to bed.
and with that, let's wrap it up. Let's put this podcast to bed.
All right. Well, I want to leave folks with one last thing that is really working for me about my gaming life, and that is the community of people around the podcast. Like having a place to hang out on the internet, things like the Discord, talk to people about the games, and just honestly the incredibly valuable service of having somebody who will go and like watch the Nintendo Direct and come on the podcast Discord and say, "Hey, Raygan, here's the 2 things that were in the Nintendo Direct that you might actually care about." Like,
I have been thinking
such a service.
We should be shouting out our community a lot more than we are, and I'm going to start doing that right now by saying I want to welcome our newest member to the community. That is Electric Nebraska on Discord. I don't know your actual name. If you tell me, I will shout you out again.
Thank you, Electric Nebraska. Thanks to all of our listeners. It's been a good time. I really appreciate when you reach out, with a game suggestion or just to shoot the shit or with feedback about an episode, all that stuff. And the Discord is obviously my favorite place for that because it's a nice community there. If you want to join, jumping ahead to our outro stuff, but if you want to join our Discord, and we would love to have you, that's open to all of our patrons on Patreon. And you can go to patreon.com/theshortgame and support the show with even just $1 a month. That's $12 a year. That's nothing. And you'll get instant access to our Discord. And if you support at a higher level, I will send you some stickers, which I owe one of our listeners some stickers. And I got your address and I can't find any stamps. So they're coming as soon as I find some stamps. Hang on. Should we go ahead and wrap it up here?
Why not?
Yeah, I think it's about time. Thank you, listeners. So we've already thanked our patrons. Thanks to all of our listeners. You can find the show on the internet at www. Well, actually, we've got now 2 URLs, and I'm now never quite sure which one I should be referring people to. Shortgame.fm. Shortgame.fm is the place to go. It's got all the links. It's got a link to our show notes page, which you can go to see actual, episode listings and search for old episodes. It's got links to all of our socials. It's got links to subscribe to the show on the various platforms of your choice. It's got a link to the place where you can buy a t-shirt with the Short Game logo on it. It's a very fashionable choice. And all of the other stuff. So shortgame.fm. You can also find me on the internet. I'm mostly on Mastodon these days, apart from the Discord. And I am Raygan, Raygan, at bird.rodeo. And Shane, where can people find you?
I think you can find me on 8-Bit Shane at mstdn.social.
Link is on shortgame.fm.
At Twitter at 8-Bit Shane.
Indeed. And once again, thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.